Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto and Ino was detectives, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto reread the overview of the proposed mission that Lieutenant Nara Shikamaru handed him just minutes earlier. The overview didn't look any good the second time around, and he didn't hold out hope that a third read would make it more palatable. There were quite a few points of contention, so Naruto chose the first one. You really think that the shooting the day before yesterday was a result of a botched burglary of the building next to the Sacred Heart Church? He asked the man in front of him. No, Shikamaru readily answered. But I'd rather have the press report than link it with the shooting that happened a week earlier. The spiky blonde male nodded, but the two shootings wouldn't stay unlinked for long. All it would take was another incident, and unfortunately another incident was already in the planning stages. That is, if the gunman hadn't already finalized his next hit. But the real question was the cur associated to the matchmaking agency or the florist? Or neither. The or neither part was the most troublesome scenario he could think of. If the shootings weren't connected through the businesses, then maybe they had a thrill cur or just a plain psycho on the loose. Not that they didn't have that anyway. But Naruto preferred his psychos to keep to a discernible pattern, because with hard work and some luck, patterns could be identified. The shell casings taken from the two crime scenes didn't match, Ino said as she read her copy of the overview. Which makes things more complicated. She finished as she gave a weary sigh. It just means that our shooter likes to trade off weapons, Naruto advised her. It doesn't mean the crimes aren't related. Another sigh came from the platinum blonde. Do you have any arguments, comments, objections and violent reactions? Shikamaru asked them. If you have, then please direct them to me, and not at one another. He sighed. Troublesome blondes, he whispered. The lieutenant was definitely a multitasker. While he tossed out those leading questions and semi-reprimands, he looked through a report, scrawled his signature on it and tossed it into his outbox before he went on to the next one. But then, no one had ever accused this particular person inefficient. Just the opposite. The only accusation had been in the area of his preferential treatment. Concerns, Naruto volunteered. Time to move on to point 2. He had a lot of concerns, but the major one was the woman with the long platinum blonde hair and aqua-colored eyes sitting next to him. Now the question was how to voice that concern without thoroughly riling Ino's superior and friend, a man he had no desire to rile. Even under a cloud of suspicion. Shikamaru was formidable. Naruto's investigation into departmental favoritism would no doubt irritate the man enough without adding more to the mix. Sergeant Uzumaki thinks this case is too personal for me, Ino countered. He believes I should step aside because I knew Sakura. And with that totally accurate observation, she looked across the desk that separated them and met her former teammate's dark gaze. In the next few seconds, at least 100 or more words passed between them, even though neither spoke. It was an interesting encounter to watch. The lieutenant stared at her and lifted his eyebrows, just a fraction. That was it. No other changes in his otherwise calm expression. Yet the simple gesture caused Ino's mouth to tighten, and her grip on the chair arm whitened her knuckles. Naruto could have sworn the temperature in the room dropped by a full 10 degrees. Detective Yamanaka has renegade tendencies, Naruto added. I'd prefer to work with another detective on this case. He finished. Bringing in another detective might be a problem. The lieutenant extracted a manila folder from a stack and slid it on Naruto's way. This'll be an undercover assignment and Ino here has already her foot in the door, the lieutenant continued. What door? Naruto raised his eyebrows. At the matchmaking agency that might be connected to the two shootings. Shikamaru answered. With that, Ino let out a soft groan as she sank lower in her chair. I must have missed that foot in the door part when reading the overview, Naruto commented. Shikamaru pointed to the folder. It's all in there. Naruto opened the folder in which he found a lengthy questionnaire from the Perfect Match agency on the top page. It was dated a week earlier and it had been filled out 2 days after the shooting. And the name at the top. Asakawa Ino. Naruto felt a groan coming on, as well. Is this your handiwork? He threw the question at the platinum blonde. Yes, but no one at the perfect match has any idea that I'm a cop. No one. Asakawa is obviously an alias. Ino directed her answers to both men. I wanted to get a look at the people who worked there. I figured this was the fastest way to do it. She continued. But not the smartest way, Naruto quickly added. You could have jeopardized everything in there by going out on your own. He let her know. But I didn't. Ino moved onto the edge of her seat. I can do whatever you need me to do to make this undercover assignment work, she said towards her lieutenant and former teammate, Shikamaru. I'm not the one you need to convince, Ino. The chief assigned Sergeant Uzumaki as the lead for this case. And the lieutenant sat back and left it at that. The proverbial ball had just been tossed into Naruto's proverbial court. Unfortunately, he also knew how these next few minutes were about to play out. Hell, Yamanaka Ino had certainly put him in a hard place with her coloring outside the lines etude. Still, it'd only compound the problem if he let his personal feelings influence the most logical way to approach this. Well, it was the most logical way considering she'd already tossed a monkey wrench or two into the scenario. It wouldn't be smart for me to use another detective at this point, Naruto concluded, speaking more to himself than the two police officers with him. He glanced at the questionnaire while he finished up his explanation. It figured. Ino had listed ramen as her favorite food. If the Kurs are part of the perfect match agency, then he or she might be suspicious of anyone registering so soon after the second shooting. He continued talking. Guess that leaves you out then, huh? Ino all but smirked at him. Even though it was a borderline petty, Naruto liked it when people did that, especially when he could smirk right back. He calmly shuffled through the papers in the folder, extracted his own questionnaire and passed it to her. Her eyes widened and skimmed over the first page. You filled this out the same day that I did. She was astounded. Let the smirking begin. Yes, he casually replied. She hissed out a breath. Need I remind you that you just accused me of jumping the gun by going to the agency? She was very pissed. The difference is I was on this case, and you weren't. Naruto held out his hands to emphasize the space. Big difference. I'm talking huge, he sarcastically added. The temperature went down another notch, and her aqua eyes narrowed to SS. Which brings us up to date, I believe, Shikamaru interjected. Good timing, Naruto thought, since Ino looked ready to implode. We have to act fast. There are only 5 days until Saturday. 5 days until a whole host of weddings are scheduled to take place all over the village. 5 days to stop a Kur from striking again. Naruto was well aware of that. Those 5 days were already breathing down his N. I've learned the florist in question is doing the flower arrangements for 2 weddings this weekend, one Saturday, another at Sunday night. In fact, I haven't been able to connect any of the upcoming marriages to a matchmaking agency. Neither have I. Ino pulled out her own set of notes from a leather briefcase that was leaning against her chair. And therein lies our problem. Perfect Match doesn't release all the names of their clients who've made wedding plans. So it becomes a needle in the haystack approach. It's the only approach we have now. Naruto fired back. We could stake out all the weddings here in Konoha, but it'll eat up too many questions and maybe even panic. Plus, there are other ceremonies, the ones that aren't listed. We wouldn't be able to cover. Our best bet is to go back to the source of connection, the perfect match agency. They require matched couples to meet there first for an icebreaker, and there's one every Tuesday night, including tomorrow night. It starts at 7:30, Ino provided. We don't need an invitation. We just need to be computer matched, somehow. It didn't surprise Naruto that she knew those details. She probably already picked out the clothes she was going to wear. And she'd done all of that before being officially assigned to the team. His team. He hoped like the devil that she didn't wear those sea stilettos. He'd have enough distractions as it was. Detective Yamanaka and I'll do this intro thing tomorrow night at Perfect Match, Naruto continued, making sure he sounded like the boss. Because after the mini fantasy involving her choice of fashion, he needed he remind her in the worst sort of way. We'll pretend we were high school sweethearts and that we're surprised but happy to be reunited. She nodded. Good idea. And that'll explain a hasty engagement and equally hasty marriage. Well, hopefully. It might also make the wrong person suspicious, but he'd deal with that when and if it happened. While we're there, we'll have a good look around the place. Without breaking the law, of course. He let that sound as a reminder for Ino's sake. Another huff came from the platinum blonde. Naruto ignored her and continued, in the meantime I'll keep going through the background checks I've been doing on the employees and the owners of the matchmaking agency as well as the florist. I've done background checks as well, Ino informed him. Of course you have, Naruto commented mockingly. The woman had an incredibly effective scalpel-sharp glare. I'm not an idiot. I did them discreetly. Naruto might have questioned her on what she considered discreet, but the lieutenant spoke first. Sounds as if you have everything under control. Not even close. Naruto kept the sentiment to himself. Good. Shikamaru stood and reached for the jacket DRD over the back of his chair. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an appointment with the chief. Feel free to use my office to hash out the rest of the details. Oh, and it goes without saying, keep me informed. Wait, Ino called out to him. You're both missing a key point. Yes, Sergeant Uzumaki and I filled out these questionnaires, but that in itself doesn't give us a computer match. I hate to state the obvious here, but the computer does that. In fact, it generates a list of matches so the candidates can meet the people at the icebreaker. What if neither of us have any matches? What then? We can't just show up there. I'd planned to have one of the techs to go into the system and arrange for the questionnaires to be matched. Naruto explained. Ino shook her head. That sounds risky. Someone at the agency might figure out. A match isn't a problem, Shikamaru assured them. It's all in the folder. There was something strange about the lieutenant's self-satisfied expression that sent Naruto thumbing through the rest of the papers in the file. Ino must have sensed it too, because she leaned closer so she could see the docents as well. It didn't take Naruto long to find it. There it was. The dozen or so men listed as dream date matches for client 6341B, Asakawa Ino. His own alias, Namikaze Naruto, was the first name on the list. He felt as if someone had slugged him in the solar plexus. You already had the tech rig the system? Naruto asked. But he didn't think that's what had generated the look on the lieutenant's face. No, the two of you matched without any tech interference, Shikamaru answered. And with that little Scud missile attack, the lieutenant left them sitting there in somewhat stunned silence. It had to be the ramen, or the hair color. Naruto mumbled under his breath. Or maybe Ino just jotted down a whole bunch of lies while filling out the questionnaire. He hadn't. That was for sure. Unnecessary lies were just too hard to keep track of, so with the exception of his name, address, and occupation, everything else was true. Yet, they'd matched. Even if she'd lied, that was an unsettling coincidence because it meant her lies matched his truths. Naruto quietly pushed that coincidence aside and moved on to the mission at hand. I'll see you at the perfect match tomorrow night. He stood and tucked the folder beneath his arm. Until then, we keep doing these background checks and hope we find a smoking gun. Oh, and by the way, I insist officers on my team follow the rules. My rules, he emphasized. If you jeopardize this assignment again. I won't, was her short reply. If you do, I'll have your butt and your badge. He continued. She nodded after a contemplative moment. Naruto almost decided to leave it at that, but there was something he couldn't leave unsaid. I hope it's occurred to you that this plan is designed to send a cur after us. No hesitation this time. It has. Ino fanned herself with the perfect match folder. Even though the sun was on the verge of setting, the summer heat was still escaping in filmy waves off the asphalt. It was muggy. She willed herself not to sweat as she hurried across the parking lot toward the sprawling building that housed the perfect match agency. Willing didn't work. A slick bead of perspiration shirred down the center of her back. As Ino stepped through the front door of the agency, she mumbled a thank you for the Arctic blast of the Auto FC and made her way to the reception area. An empty area, she soon learned. Empty, no doubt, because she was early. Her early arrival in this case would allow her time to double-check the few things she could actually double-check. Exits, bullet-accessible windows, security cameras, like the one mounted on the light fixture in the center of the room. It also gave her some time to take a deep breath and steady her nerves. Someone had decorated the spacious rectangle-shaped room. Unlike her earlier visit, Tonight there were bunches of gold balloons in the corner, huge bouquets of cream-colored flowers in crystal vases and bottles of champagne angled into gleaming silver ice buckets. Soft romantic music filled the background. The stage was set for love. But hopefully not M. She was armed with a Glock in her purse. It was her preferred poison when she needed to carry light. And thanks to the flexible, pencil-sized device beneath her collar, she had two-way communication with headquarters. However, neither of those two measures would give her much protection if someone opened fire through the trio of floor-to-ceiling windows. For all practical purposes, she was on her own. An obvious drawback to being early. The sudden clicking sound sent her reaching for her gun, but Ino forced herself not to draw. She needed to stay in character. It was a good timing, too. Because the click was a door opening, and the grey-haired man who came in through the side entrance wasn't carrying a weapon but another bottle of champagne. He immediately made eye contact and smiled, a slightly too friendly smile, before he proceeded to the table with champagne. Asakawa Ino, right? He asked. Yes, she simply replied. Ino didn't have to ask his name. He was Yakushi Kabuto, age 29. He was the office manager of the Perfect Match agency. He was also a prime M suspect. Of course, anyone associated with the agency was a suspect, but Kabuto was near the top of the list. According to his background check, he'd been hit with not one but two restraining orders for stalking his former girlfriends. The last incident had escalated into an assault. Yakushi Kabuto, he greeted. I run things around here. In fact, I'm the one who processed your application. His face got a contemplative look for several seconds, then he snapped his fingers. You're a dance instructor, part-time PE teacher on break for the summer, who likes action and adventure movies, sake and ramen. He grinned as if pleased with himself for recalling that information. Ino didn't return the grin. If he actually memorized details about every client, it was a little unnerving. If he'd only memorized her details, then it went well past the unnerving stage. I remember because I kept thinking what a great match we'd be, he continued. But unfortunately, since I work here, I'm not allowed to pair up with any of the clients. Well, not officially anyway. Good grief. As if he hadn't gotten his message across, he aimed another flirtatious grin in her direction. So, do a lot of people actually find the perfect match at these icebreaker? She asked. Depends on your definition of perfect. He casually replied. A lifelong partner, Ino quickly offered. Marriage. He shrugged. Sure, it happens, but that was as far as he took the thread of conversation. She pointed to the wall above the table. You should put photos of the happy couples there. It'd be great publicity. I'll pass on your suggestion to my boss. He placed the bottle of champagne on the table, searched through the 24 or so plastic encased name tags and picked up one. Hers, apparently. He crossed the room and reached out as if to pin it on her jacket, just over her left B, but Ino intervened and took it from him instead. So he was perhaps a groping L in addition to being a stalker and a cur. What a pleasant guy. His smile faded, probably because he wasn't happy with her insistence that she pin on her own name tag. Kabuto tipped his head to the glossy gold and white perfect match folder she tucked beneath her arm. So, did you see any immediate prospects on your list? 1. But it could be a coincidence. Since it was a time to do a little more stage setting, she pinned on her name tag and opened the folder. She pointed to Naruto's alias. I dated a guy that name in high school. Something darted through his ebony black eyes. Concern, maybe. Is that good or bad? Definitely good. He's the one who got away, if you know what I mean. Ino said. He made a sound of superficial agreement and quickly excused himself to leave when a man and a woman came in. Not Naruto. But from the already friendly chatter and the come and get me smiles, these two had already decided that they were a good match. Once the two newcomers had on their name tags, Ino whispered their identities so the tech back at the headquarters could begin background checks. In case something serious developed between them, she didn't want this couple to become the sniper's next targets. Asakawa Ino. Is that really you? She heard the now familiar voice say. It's show time. She took a long breath, braced herself and turned toward him to start the charade. Oh, mercy. She obviously hadn't braced herself nearly enough. At the wedding, she'd seen Naruto's GQ look, this time she was looking with his cool hot guy look. It worked. Black perfectly tailored pants. A deep crimson red croon pullover that hugged his chest the way men's chest should be hugged. Well, men with great chests anyway. Which he had. The breeze coming in from the still open door stirred his lightweight jacket. Also black. He'd likely worn it to conceal his .357 Magnum, but it made him look a little mysterious, confident, and dangerous. Ino bet he'd never had to take a deep breath to steady himself. On the other hand, she required several more. Naruto. Namika's Naruto, she managed to say, when she remembered how to form words. Her tea actually clamped up. She added a stage giggle of excitement to unclamp it. It is you. I can't believe this. As they'd discussed, Naruto and she went to each other immediately, and he pulled her into his arms. Yep, he was definitely carrying concealed, and there was a backup in the slide holster on the rear waist of his pants. You're early, he whispered. You're not, she countered, also in a whisper. I was busy. We might have a little problem. Okay, little didn't sound so bad. Little problems always arose during undercover missions. What? That's as far as Ino got. Naruto brushed his mouth over hers. A friendly sort of gesture, which they'd also discussed should happen. In theory, such gesture was supposed to announce to the people at the agency that they were staking their personal claims on each other. Like his clothes, it worked. Ino heard the other couple and Yakushi Kabuto mention something about an apparent perfect match. Ino also heard her heart pounding in her ears and felt her body turning soft and warm. And she cursed herself. Talk about being a hormonal wimp. Somehow, she had to make herself immune to any carnal-related reactions to Uzumaki Naruto, and she did that with a simple reminder that he was not only her boss but also the man investigating her friend and former teammate. That immediately cooled off her body. She pulled back, both literally and figuratively. Incoming 6 o'clock, Naruto whispered. In other words, someone was approaching from directly behind her. While Naruto kept her firmly against him, she turned her head, already smiling, and came face to face with Hiroko Sasori, the owner of Perfect Match. And also, one of the suspects. He seemed younger than Ino had expected, and she'd expected young. Sasori was barely 26 but could have passed for a teenager. Well, except his coffee brown eyes. There was something not so youthful about them. Sasori wasn't alone. A broad-shouldered man came into the reception area with him and took position near the door. It was Ino's guess that he wasn't a client looking for love but was rather a bodyguard. Maybe this was the little problem Naruto mentioned. I smell success, Sasori greeted. Asakawa Ino, Namika's Naruto, Sasori continued as he took several steps forward. It's a pleasure to meet you. Welcome. She felt Naruto stiffen slightly but couldn't ask him why. It probably had something to do with the guard who was studying him a little too carefully. Naruto extended his hand to Sasori. Thanks. It looks like joining Perfect Match was the wise thing to do. He smiled lovingly at Ino before he slid his attention back at Sasori. By the way, a friend of mine said he might be here tonight. Minamoto Daisuke. Have you seen him? Minamoto Daisuke. Ino had no idea what his was about. There was no one by that name associated with this case. Sasori shook his head. We're expecting a big crowd, so you might want to check your friend's name tag is on the table. Sasori's suggestion was just beginning, however, and not a prelude to a departure. Like a good host, he introduced him to the other couple. By the time he'd finished, more clients had started to trickle in. Yakushi Kabuto did his hosting duties, as well. He began pouring the champagne, lots of it. Nothing like alcohol to kick up the libido and lower the defenses. The piped-in music switched to a slow, sultry beat. What about that little problem? She asked Naruto the moment Sasori walked away. She looped her arm through his and leaned against him, snuggling, so she could speak as softly as possible. Someone's watching the place, he calmly answered. Okay, maybe it wasn't so little after all. Any idea who? She continued. Yeah. Again, no explanation since groping boy, Yakushi Kabuto, walked up to them with a tray of filled champagne glasses. Even when they both declined, the man didn't move far enough away for them to have a private conversation. Naruto remezed that. Smiling and whispering sweet nothings about how glad he was to see her again, he led Ino to the far end of the room and then just inside the hallway that led to the agency's offices. He angled them so they wouldn't be facing the camera in the reception room. Hisagi Karen, Naruto informed her. When the static crackled in their respective communicators, he turned his off, because the now close proximity was interfering with reception. She's parked outside the building. Ino didn't have to ask who that was. Karen was a regular client at Perfect Match and a former acquaintance of Uchiha Sasuke, the med groom of her best friend Sakura. And that was a former acquaintance in a very bad way. After Karen and Sasuke had met, dated and then broken up, she had apparently threatened him. The police had been looking for her but hadn't been able to locate her, not since she'd quit her job and moved out of her apartment. Apparently though, she'd come to them. No sign of her carrying an assault rifle, huh? Ino asked, only partly joking. Not that I could see, but I've got 2 officers in a surveillance van watching her just in case. Naruto glanced over his shoulder and mumbled some profanity. Play along, he whispered to her. And that was it. No other warning. No hint that he was about to launch into a full contact charade. Naruto pushed her against the wall and kissed her. He pressed his body against her. Snugly, until they were aligned like human puzzle parts. Ino caught a glimpse of Sasori watching them from the reception room. So this was Naruto's version of a get-lost tactic. Naruto kept the mouth-to-mouth clinical. Well, as clinical as something like that could be, considering he had a rather hot kissing technique. No tongue involved. Just the right amount of pressure, glide and moisture to make Ino wish, at least temporarily, that he'd eventually use his tongue. He didn't stop there. His kisses traveled from her mouth, to her cheek, to her ear. Not good. Ino bit off of pleasure. It seemed trivial, considering everything else that was going on, but if these forced kissing sessions continued, she would need some ground rules so he could go easy on her erogenous zones. Any suspicious activity around the perimeter of the building? Naruto murmured. Not exactly the sensual question her body had expected to hear from the man kissing her, and it took a moment for Ino to realize that he wasn't talking to her, but speaking to the 2 officers through her communicator. Hisagi Karen still watching the place, was the response they got. Obviously unaware of the effect he was having on her, Naruto continued his inquiries while pretending to nibble on her earlobe. Tail her if she leaves, he commanded. Normally, whispered orders wouldn't have been a turn on for her. But Naruto's warm, moist breath against her and ear. Damn. Not good. She didn't want to add any more hormones to this volatile mix. Another glance at the reception area. No Hiroko Sasori in sight. At least their kissing session had sent him on his way. Sasori knew our names, Naruto informed her. I wasn't wearing a name tag, and he never looked at yours, yet he knew who we were. Ino went back through the events of that particular introduction and realized that it was true. She reprimanded herself for not noticing it, as well. So, that's what Daisuke was all about? She asked. Not a real person but a test. Since Sasori suggested that Naruto look through the name tags, it meant he didn't know the names of all the guests. And unlike a few of the others, Naruto and she weren't repeat costumers. Nor had they met him when they filled out their applications. So how had he known the names? This might not be such a little problem, Ino mumbled. Naruto quickly agreed. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.